I like to talk about celebrity divorce. It's kind of easier to pick on celebrities if they're not my clients. Even though you may not be a celebrity, you can still learn from mistakes that they might be making.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Bar podcast. I'm your host, Anissa Tova, and I am truly excited for our guest today. She lives in the intersection of law, leadership, storytelling. Morghan Richardson, she's a partner and co-chair of Tarter Krinsky Drogin LLP, Matrimonial Family Law Practice. She's a matrimonial attorney. She represents high net worth individuals, innovators, public figures, and she deals with, pretty complicated divorce and custody cases and all, she's doing all of that with compassion, discretion, and obviously the gist of the show is to go beyond the title and the fame. And so, yes, she's a fierce litigator, but I am really excited to dive deeper and get to know Morghan better. Morghan, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Denisa. It's great to be here.
Finally, right?
I know. It's difficult scheduling, but we made it.
Exactly. We made it. Yeah. So, I'm curious, tell me your story. I mean, how did you get to where you are today and what you do today?
Well, I think I've told this story to a number of people before, but when I got out of law school, I started at a very large law firm. They call it Big Law. And I did corporate litigation during that time, and I found it very dry, to be honest with you. It was not something that really made me feel passionate about the law and about being an attorney. And so about 5, 6 years in, I said, I need to do something different. I need to figure out what makes me want to get out of bed in the morning. And I started taking different pro bono cases so I could see what different areas of practice looked like. And divorce really resonated with me because it's very personal. It's much different than representing corporations. It's very personal, intimate, and you can really see the impact that you're having on someone's life.
That's not an easy work. So going all the way back, or as back as we can, where did the idea to go to law school, become a lawyer come from?
Well, before I went to law school, I worked as a newspaper reporter. I worked at a newspaper in Texas and also a newspaper in Florida. And I was on the cops and courts beat, which means that I got to run around with the police, go to crime scenes, and then I also got to watch really fascinating trials and things like that. What they don't show you when you're a newspaper reporter is what the discovery process looks like. They don't show you all the behind the scenes, tons of documents coming in and the late nights of combing through those and the forensic accounting behind figuring things out financially. So I thought that sounded like something that was compelling to me. When I was a reporter in Texas, though, I did have the I don't want to say it was luck, but I covered an execution by the state of Texas for an inmate. And it was very dramatic. And the only people who showed up for the defendant to watch at his execution were his attorneys. And it was a pivotal moment for me in comparing what I felt like I was doing as a journalist, where I was sort of on the sidelines watching things happen, versus what the attorneys were doing, where they were actually involved in what was happening and trying to make a difference. So a culmination of all of those things led me to go to law school.
Growing up, well, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Florida. Yeah,
Florida.
it's like the reverse of what people do. They want to leave New York and go to Florida. I left Florida to come to New York.
That is interesting. What were you into as a young girl?
I was into a lot of things. I've always been interested in writing, though. And so when I got through college, journalism was a really good fit for me through newspapers because I liked writing. So that was something that drew me to that line of work. And I think also just being out in the public, talking to people, hearing stories. It's sort of what you're doing with your podcast, hearing different people's stories and their perspectives. I think that's really empowering. And I think it really spreads education. When you hear something through a story, it's more likely to sort of stick with you. So I like that component of journalism, and I like that component of lawyering, and I like that component of also just my own blogging efforts or social media efforts. I think that the storytelling really can spread awareness.
Yeah, you know what? I now recall a very, very brief conversation with you several months ago about social media and how does attorney build brand? Like, what is sort of that fine line, right? Where you can honor your profession because you put yourself out there, right? You're completely vulnerable, transparent, and then you have your clientele and they're going through their own stuff. And I've seen, I've seen some of your stories and posts, and what has that been like for you to do that?
I think it's not for the faint of heart, but I also think that being a divorce attorney is also not for the faint of heart. So being online, I think it definitely does put you in a little bit of a vulnerable position. But I think the key to it is to just be authentic and to be yourself. People are not looking for us as attorneys to just be robots. They're wanting to know more about who we are or what our positions are, that we stand firm in what we believe. And I think that's frightening for a lot of attorneys because we're afraid that we might turn off a potential client. And my theory there is sort of like, well, if they don't like that, then they're probably not going to like working with me. And it'll make it more stressful. And I don't want to make anyone's divorce more stressful than it needs to be by being a bad fit. So, I kind of have let myself sort of be vulnerable and put my positions out there and stand by those positions so that people can sort of know what they're getting into when they decide they want to hire me.
I like that in a way. To me, and I'm just kind of like, I'm just feeling it. It's almost a freeing because this is what you get. And if you don't like it, it's like you're pre-qualifying someone. Well, this is who she is as a person. You either like it or you don't. And if that resonates with you, you come to me. That means we sort of got that out of the way, right? It's not this like, oh my gosh, I've seen my lawyer, like doing this TikTok dance. I don't know.
I
Yeah.
don't think I've done too many dances. I mean, maybe a few. But I also think it kind of, I don't know if you've seen the show Hamilton,
Yes,
where
yes.
Hamilton is willing to stand by what he says and Burr is kind of wait for it. And I think that's sort of the archetype of a lot of attorneys. We don't want to necessarily commit to a position, but the people, I think, feel more attracted to that person who is willing to stand up for what they believe and to just put that out there. And I think we should, as attorneys, be willing to let our positions be known and to let ourselves be known in things in areas that we're passionate about. So if it's about politics or if it's about a hobby or a sport or, my family or things like that, or even my own experiences being divorced, I'm willing to do that. I'm willing to put that information out there.
Yeah, that's not easy, but you're right. I can see that being completely transparent. I think what it does, it humanizes you, humanizes the profession, and I think that's actually part of why I started this podcast is the storytelling and really recognizing that you have to wear so many roles, but underneath all that, you're a human being. You have to hold it together, for yourself, your family when you are outside and you're entitled to being a human. So I love that. You mentioned you went through divorce yourself.
Yes, I am divorced. I'm not just a divorce attorney, I'm also a client.
Yeah.
But I got very lucky. My divorce was very amicable, and we are really very able to co-parent and things like that. We go on vacations together. Actually, we're taking our kids to Portugal next month for the spring break. So we'll be
The two of you,
traveling together.
your ex-spouse and your kids, your
And
all
my current
and your new
spouse
spouse.
and my ex-spouse's
That's
girlfriend, and
great.
yes, it
I
will be
love
a
it.
very
Yeah.
big trip. Yeah.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, I've been through it myself. Tony and I co-parented really, really well. This was gazillion years ago. And yeah, our kids would comment and say, you guys get along as being divorced, but sort of friends, much better than our friends' parents in intact households who sometimes can't even stand each other. And they're arguing and it just creates this tension. So it's almost like a natural transition, right? Because you have to be in each other's lives for the sake of children for a very long time.
Yeah. I think that co-parenting well with someone is just such a really important skill. Um, I mean, my divorce was very amicable. We have two sons together. And like I said, we managed to go on vacations together. We have holidays. There's not this tension. And there's not a tension placed on the kids to have to choose. But I also share a daughter with an ex-boyfriend, and that has been litigated. The custody has been litigated off and on for probably going on 8 years. So I have that experience as well.
Mm.
And I think, I absolutely can speak from both sides. Having the amicable situation is far superior. It's better for the kids, it's better for everyone involved. And then having a very stressful custody fight, it is, it's terrible. It's a horrible experience. And it really resonates with me when a client comes to me and they're in that situation, what exactly they're facing, what we're going to have to do to try to, get them what they want. How can we protect their kids in that situation? Or how can we protect their position in that situation? And, I've been through that myself. It's just been a very illuminating experience.
Boy, that is tough. You really do have a wide breadth of experience.
Mhm.
Incredible. Do you blog under the name Divorce Artist?
Yeah, I have a blog. I try to keep it current, and just talking about different issues that may be going on, talking about buddy. Yeah, even though you may not be a celebrity, you can still learn from mistakes that they might be making. So that you'll see that on my blog, The Divorce Artist.
That's interesting. Yeah. It's I think there was a term that a celebrity couple first coined. Was it uncoupling? Was it conscious uncoupling? Was it Gwyneth
Mhm.
Paltrow, I think?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was just to me, it was a term. I mean, I think many couples have tried that. I've experienced when I did financial mediation, many parents try to do that. Just kind of what you're doing is for the sake of their children, is to be fully present and just really treat each other with dignity and have a respectful process.
Yeah, I think also just going through the process yourself, um, it really gives you an easier insight into what clients are experiencing.
Mm.
And I tend to forget that. And I think we all tend to forget what kind of emotional experience that they're having and what it feels like, just being in court, because we're in court all the time. We're in court every day. And it's just never something that we take a step back from and say, oh my gosh, this is, you know, this is too much, or this is overwhelming, or what does this look like from their eyes? And I had that experience recently where I was in court. I felt like this court appearance could have been an email, that meme, like this could have been an email. It was just a very routine court appearance. It was the first time on. But for my client, it was emotionally overwhelming, and they ended up crying as we were leaving the courthouse just because the experience was just so intense. And I feel like a lot of attorneys sort of take that for granted, or they're not sensitive to it, and don't realize that. But a lot of times the emotions that clients are going through really will drive the litigation, or it can make the case much worse than it needs to be, or things like that. So I try to pay attention to that too.
Or internalizing, right?
Mhm.
I think many practitioners kind of lean into it almost too much, and then it can perpetuate that. But again, human emotions are unpredictable, and you really don't know what's going on, which is why I have to give it to you. It's a really hard work. So stepping outside of it, what would it look like? What would you do with yourself if you couldn't practice law?
I would always love to write. I'm actually working on several books. So I do have I do have that as a hobby,
Okay.
just because
Wow.
coming from that background as a journalist and as a writer, it's not something that you can set aside very easily. So we'll see where those go. Some are divorce related.
Um, we talked about so you wrote, you blogged, and you mentioned so if you couldn't practice law, what would you do?
Right. So yeah, so I'm working on a couple of different books. It's definitely not something that you can set aside easily when you're a writer and you just want to write. So I definitely would focus more on writing. I also really like cycling. I don't think that I could be a professional bicyclist, but I would love to spend more time doing that. It's so much fun. It brings so much joy. I think it's just something that's great to just get out into the city and see the world and see things from that view. I love that. So,
When did you tell me about your cycling? When did you start and
oh, I started in law school and it was mainly for transportation reasons because it gets very, very hot in New Orleans. I went to Tulane Law. And so it's very hot and muggy, and jumping on a bicycle was much easier with your books in your backpack than trying to trudge through the city and facing all that humidity and everything. So I started cycling then, and it's been 20 years. I still cycle. And I try to get out every day, but at least at the bare minimum, like 3 times a week. Um, yeah.
have you ever participated in any like organized rides for
Yeah.
a cause?
Yeah, absolutely. I like to do the 5 borough bike ride. It's through Bike New York. So
Biking?
there's a lot of different fun rides in the city. It's very New York City. It doesn't seem like it would be, but it's actually very cyclist friendly. And the 5 borough is really fun because you get to see all of the different boroughs, and it ends in Staten Island. You get to ride over the Verrazano Bridge at the end of the ride, which is always exciting. And it's just, it's a great ride, and it's really, it's not competitive, but you're competing against yourself. So I like that.
Mm, I like that. Compete. It's you against you.
Yeah.
What
I'm
do
my
you?
toughest adversary.
That is so true. We set our own bar super high. Yeah.
Mhm.
Uh, Something completely different. I mean, what is, and I love asking that. What do weekends look like in your house? Just unplanned, kicking back.
So my house is a little bit chaotic. I'm remarried and we have 5 kids that live in my house. So we have, and my sons are back and forth right now with their dad. So, depending on what time of day, they might be at my house, they might be at his house. We have my oldest son and my husband's youngest son are both turning 18. So we're looking for colleges. We're looking forward to graduation. I'm looking forward maybe to having a few less people in the house.
Wow.
But that's bittersweet. And then I have a 16-year-old son. My daughter is 11 and my other daughter just turned 9. So we have a lot of different activities, a lot of fun. And I am trying to instill the love of biking in everyone. So I do try to drag them out to take their bikes out and things like that, to get out of the house on the weekends. But
That sounds like such a great chaos, though.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, in a good way, just having
Yeah.
everybody there. I know it can get overwhelming, but there's something about it. You're right, bittersweet. And just life goes by so quickly. Time goes by so quickly. It's incredible. What advice would you give to incoming attorneys, either graduating law school or, first year associate who's just trying to figure out the lay of the land? What would you say to them?
I would say the most important thing is to focus on what drives your passion. And this was something that a lawyer told us, I think it was my first day of orientation at Tulane Law. And he said, don't focus on the money, focus on what interests you, focus on what excites you and what will get you out of bed. And I remember that because when I was working in big law, there was not a second that went by that I didn't feel time going by because I was so unhappy. And even though I was being really well compensated at big law, it didn't excite me. It was hard to get out of bed. I wasn't interested in what I was doing. It was just like living in a fog. And it was terrifying to walk away from that. But it wasn't what I was meant to do. So in just walking away from that big salary and saying, okay, now I'm switching practices. It's very hard when you are a 5th or 6th year attorney to just switch practices. Nobody really wants to take you on. So I started my own practice at that point, taking on divorce clients and family law clients. I did as many CLEs as I possibly could. I networked with as many practitioners as I could to try to get resources for myself so I could understand what was happening with divorce. And just don't be afraid to do that. I think law school really teaches us how to think. And if you feel like you're stuck somewhere, don't be afraid to find an area of practice that might be a better fit for you. Even if it means the income isn't there right away. It was a huge risk for me to just start my own practice. I had 2 little kids, and just starting my practice, and then my practice expanded and it grew. And then I was able to merge with a larger firm. And now I'm here as a co-chair at it's a mid-sized firm, but it's 130 attorneys. And we're still growing and expanding. And it's really worked out for me to just follow that passion.
It's never too late to start.
That's right.
Yeah. No, this has been, we'll definitely do continued, I should say, of this. This has been really enjoyable. And I know there is more, and I have, like you said, storytelling. I'm so interested in your story. And this has been a really powerful conversation. I mean, you're really not just a practicing family law. You really are almost reshaping how we're talking about the divorcing experience and the divorce law is by sharing your own experience. So I definitely really enjoyed this, and everybody who's listening, I'm sure they welcome your story, and thank you so much for sharing it.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And I'm so glad we finally got to connect.
Me too, me too. So those of you who are listening, and make sure that you subscribe to Beyond the Bar podcast. We have phenomenal guests. And also right below, there's a link how to get hold of Morghan Richardson. And until next time, be sure to stay curious and stay inspired.